Howdy guys, so tonight I'm going to be showing you how to change the snout on an Eaton M112 blower. The procedure should be similar for an M90 and some of the other Eaton units that follow the same dynamics. This specific unit is for a 2000 Jaguar XJR. I'm replacing the snout because I've had it basically processed by a company in the UK. They've milled down the snout to fit a smaller pulley on there for increased boost. They also put a new bearing and a new coupler in there as well. So that being said, I've done a cleaning on the blower. If you're interested in seeing how to do that and clean up your aluminum, you can click the link in the description. It'll show you how to take care of that pretty easily, honestly, and it brightens it up nicely. And then on top of that, I'm also doing a massive cooling service on the engine as well. So if you're a Jag owner, this could be a great option for you to see how all the hoses and everything are routed and everything like that. But this is going to be a pretty simple one. I've also actually drained the oil on this, and I did an oil change video as well. So you'll see how to drain the oil down and everything as well. I'll try and link all of these videos so you can see the bits and pieces there. But for now, we're just showing the removal and reinstallation and refilling of the superchargers. So let me show you what we're working with here. So this is the original unit. As you can see, I've cleaned the body down. I have not cleaned the snout, honestly, because I'm shipping it back as a core, and they do an excellent job of cleaning it, as you can see. So don't need to send them a cleaned one, ready to go. This is the original pulley that it comes with from the factory. And as you can see here, the pulley from Powerhouse UK is notably smaller, which will lead to an increased RPM and as such increased boost. Most importantly, this gets you more boost in the low and mid-range, which, in a heavy car like the XJ, it does matter. And the bigger increase in power comes from their smaller size pulley. This one gains about 2.5 pounds of boost. They do one that does 1.5 pounds of boost and does not actually need the machining of the snout. But that being said, my mentality was, if you're doing it, you might as well do it right. I am looking to have some fun with this car, and I figured, since I'm in there, let's do it properly. I did notice the bearing on mine, while not terrible, does have a little bit more free play than I would like, and just ever so slight, loose feeling to it. And the new one, after receiving it, the comparison was night and day. I realized, yeah, this was definitely the way to go. They've sent me something that I trust entirely. It feels excellent. And actually, the shipping was incredibly fast as well. So the extra cost of getting the fully assembled unit was well worth it, in my opinion. And again, if you guys are interested in doing this, I would highly recommend checking out Powerhouse. They're extremely professional and easy to work with. So thank you very much, guys. So as you can see here, I do have a cloth down and a piece of cardboard. The supercharger oil is mostly drained, but there's only so much that you can get out with the syringe that I used in the other video. So there's likelihood of some coming out of here. Honestly, it's not the worst smelling stuff in the world, but it's definitely not super pleasant, and I really don't want to get that into my workshop countertops. So, trying to catch as much as possible. As you can see, this is a very old microfiber that I'm ready to throw away. So as soon as everything pours into that, I'm going to use it for some simple cleanup, and it's going straight in the trash. But anyway, I do have the nose supported up on a 2x4 underneath this as well, just a little chunk of that, just to keep it relatively level so you can see what I'm working with here. So it's a relatively straightforward job. The snout arrived with no drain plug, which is an important note. So I will be removing my drain plug and reusing it in this. It is a 3/16 hex wrench. Odd considering the rest of the car is metric, but 3/16 is the size for that drain plug. So I'm going to pull that out, and then these are 10mm bolts, which I'm going to be removing as well. So I'm going to get to doing that, and we'll check back in once we have the old snout removed. right, so that was relatively straightforward. Just a quick recap. So you have the 10mm bolts that go the whole way around the outside. They're relatively in there. I think it's mostly because they use some sort of a sealant from what it looks like here. On mine, it looks like one of them, weirdly, might have not had enough sealant on it. You can see the wet one here. When I loosened that up, it looked like oil had been working its way along those threads. So it's a good thing for me to watch out for when I put this new snout back on, is to make sure it's nice and sealed. So basically, once you've removed those, and again, pull the drain plug so that you can use it on your new snout, the nose, or sorry, the snout is still actually on there quite tight because of these dowels. So all I did was take a little chunk of wood and a hammer, or if you have like a rubber mallet, and basically just tap on the pulley itself, basically just to drive it away. At the top, you could also use this tab here. Since I'm sending this back for a rebuild and I wasn't really going super hard, I didn't feel too bad tapping on it directly on the pulley. But if you're worried, or if you're just changing the oil or something like that, you can always utilize one of these surfaces instead, and that'll have a better result. Also, the bottom corners here, same deal. You can tap here, here, and here. But for me, tapping the pulley was the easier option because I had it resting on a surface and not in the car. So that being said, looking on the inside, you can see the coupler set up here, and then basically that's your gears. And you can see I've added another cloth here. There's actually quite a bit of oil still in here. So if you are using a syringe or a similar method to try and just suction the oil out, this is a good example that there is still going to be some of the old oil in there. So don't expect 100% perfection there. I definitely found a limit where I couldn't get any more out with this syringe, and yet here we are. So if you're just doing an oil change, be as thorough as you can, but don't expect, perfect. Or if you super want perfect, you could always pull the blower and do this, because then you're definitely going to get all the oil out. So I'm going to carefully get around the inside here, wipe out any of the old oil, and we're going to move into basically setting up the coupler with the new snout and getting that bolted back on. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning here, and I'll check back with you guys in a sec, and we'll go from there. But I am very excited. So far, this has been very straightforward. So now that I have the worst of the old oil out of there, other than just a little bit of residue, the last piece is the coupler itself, which connects the 3 pins here to the 3 pins on the snout. I'm going to be reusing the one in mine. You can, I think, purchase these relatively easily. Mine seems to be decent, so I'm just going to basically be reusing this unit. It's actually pretty straightforward. Legitimately, just pulls right off, like so. And basically, I'm just going to remember that you see how mine has this little extra layer on it here. So I'm going to make sure that mine ends up facing the same way around. So that little extra layer goes towards the snout. And then basically, it should be as simple as slipping this onto the dowels on there, and slipping the other end onto the dowels on here. Putting the unit together, getting the snout back onto those dowels that you watched me remove it from, and then after that, getting the bolts themselves back in. So hopefully it should be a relatively straightforward reassembly here. I am going to clean up the bolts, and I'm going to find out what the appropriate sealant to use is. So once I get it back together, I'll let you know what that was as well, and what the torque spec as well is. For an application like this, torque is going to be very important, so I'll make sure that it's torqued up appropriately. And then we're going to do a refill, and this unit is ready to go back in the car. So with the hammer, it was actually extremely easy. Basically, I just stood the blower up on end. So I kind of stood it up like this with the back seated on the edge of the workbench. I just took my block of wood, and where the two dowels are, I just gently tapped it down to seat it evenly on the dowels. After that, it seated down nicely. It's worth mentioning, so the 3 pins on the snout side of things are a smaller diameter, and they actually fit into the 3 small holes that are in the coupler. And then on the other side, they're a larger diameter pin, and there's these slots on the coupler which have a rounded end. So they actually seat towards that rounded end, if I'm correct. So that being said, you saw me have a little trouble when I was putting this back together. I presumed that it actually sat, both sets of pins sat in the holes, but obviously that doesn't physically work. So it just made sense to move them over into the slots. So, you know, don't be a fool like I was, and they should go in that way just fine. So the next step is going to be getting the bolts back in. The instructions do say that you should use a thread locker on this. I've seen people say they use blue and red. I don't actually have red for the time being. I've had pretty good luck using blue. You know, deceptive packaging, thank you Loctite, but that is actually blue thread locker. So basically I'm going to use the blue. I'm going to clean up the bolt threads, get the old sealant off of those. I've got a wire wheel and a bench grinder that'll make that pretty quick, but you could probably just do it with a wire brush as well. And once that is in, the torque spec is a total of 23 foot-pounds for these bolts. I've read that the suggestion should be kind of doing as close to a star pattern as you can with this, going to 15 foot-pounds the whole way around, and then repeat that same pattern going to 23 foot-pounds the whole way around. After that, you should be all done. Let the thread sealant cure, obviously, and then you can put your oil in, and it should be good to go. So I'm going to get these guys cleaned up. I'm going to get the Loctite in there and get them all bolted up, and this thing should be close to done. Okay, so the unit is back together. Pretty straightforward. As you saw, I used a Loctite or thread locker on the bolts. I did put the drain plug back in just temporarily. It does still need oil, but basically pretty straightforward as far as the reassembly. I basically ended up just doing a 2X pattern. So started up here, moved down to this one, and then came back up to this guy here, and then came down to this one, and then this guy, that guy, and that guy. And that was kind of evenly distributed. I went to 15 foot-pounds, and then a second time around I went to 23 foot-pounds. So basically, she is back together. Pretty straightforward overall. I mean, you know, it seems daunting, but in the end, I would say pretty manageable stuff. So next up is going to be filling it up with the oil. Real straightforward. Actually, so I had purchased this AC Delco supercharger fluid, like GM supercharger oil, because I didn't realize, but Powerhouse is actually super awesome and sends you their own oil. So I'm actually probably going to use the Powerhouse oil, I think. I mean, these guys really know what they're doing. They've been doing this for a long time, so I'm probably going to go with the one they sent. It does look a little different. This has like an amber color to it, whereas the GM stuff is almost as clear as water. Yeah, I may just chat with them and see if they have an opinion, but I'm relatively certain the answer will be to use their stuff, and I'm sure I will listen. So that being said, basically, you just fill it in through the drain plug here until it, just starts to drip out. Wipe off any excess and put the drain plug in. It does have an O-ring. I don't know if there's really a torque setting for this, so I would just say, nip it up nice and tight, but without absolutely, gorilla handing it. And at that point, you should be all done. This thing's basically ready to go back on the car. Now the only thing holding me up is I've got a new inlet gasket on the way for the rear here. Mine had a split in it, which I discovered late in the game, so unfortunately I'm now just waiting on the shipping of those parts. But that being said, outside of that, this is going back in the car, and very soon the thing should be ready for its first shakedown. So quite excited for that, and thank you again for watching along. As always, we really appreciate the viewership. Hopefully this helped you out, and if it did, please like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff does mean the world to us. We do see it, and we really appreciate it. And again, if you are an X308 owner, or or a Jag owner in general, and want to see some of this content, please subscribe, because you're going to see some more cool stuff coming down the pipe. And again, thank you so much.